So I completely stand on the fact that anybody can make money as a graphic designer. Like, bro, I'm a living witness. I've made over 300,000, of course, over the span of 7 years doing graphic design. And the cool part about that is, bro, is that I'm 100% self-taught. And in this video, I'm gonna go over how you can do the exact same thing that I did. But instead of going and looking at different tutorials, I'm gonna try to bundle that in all for you. We're gonna do a live design right here in this video. So make sure you stay to the end. Now, just to rewind where I was in my life at that point, I was maybe 21. It was actually an app on the iPhone called Superimpose that my little cousin was using that kind of sparked the idea for me to even do graphic design, because I was always familiar with Photoshop, and I'm even thankful that I caught wind to it and knew what it was before it became a term in pop culture, because it kind of took a whole new meaning on what Photoshop actually is. Either way, I had no idea that you can make money doing this. I had no idea that designers even existed. Didn't know I could get a job doing it. So I guess I had kind of assumed that all the logos, all the big billboards, album covers, all that type of stuff was maybe hand drawn. And so today, that's actually what I'm gonna use to kind of walk you through some of the things that you need to know and learn and start practicing if you want to become a designer, and more importantly, make money as a graphic designer. So let's jump on the computer. So in the spirit of recreating things, we're gonna somewhat recreate this graphic right here in Photoshop, right? And even by the end of this tutorial, you might be able to go to, some of the high schools in your area, or, some of the semi-pro teams and say, hey, I can make you promotional content, promotional designs, for whatever your fee is. But more than anything, bro, this is how I used to just practice and get better to the point to where I could charge for my services, right? So first off, Photoshop is like any other file, all right? Now, when you first get in Photoshop, you're gonna see something similar to this. It's gonna ask you what size you want your canvas to be. You're most of the time gonna be working in pixels, although sometimes inches if you're working for maybe stuff that you're gonna print or whatever, and you need inches as far as the print size or whatever. But pixels is mostly what you're gonna be using. Now, how I'm gonna start this, since I'm gonna be recreating this, is I'm gonna come over here to copy, and what Photoshop does is it actually copies the data from the clipboard to where you can make a file that size. So I come over here and do the resolution to 300. It's just a habit that I've always done. You don't have to do that, but just as simple as, but as far as any other program, as far as copying and pasting, Photoshop is the same way. So boom, paste that right in, and now you have that. Now the first teachable moment here is layer, okay? I'm gonna call this the base. I'm gonna show you something. If you click this little eye over here, you can see that you can make this visible or not visible, right? So what happens when I do the background, you're gonna see those checkers or pattern. If you've ever seen that before, what that indicates is clear and transparent pics, right? To put it into perspective, I do a black little silly whatever you see here, it's transparent, right? It's it's its own thing, right? The main thing you need to understand about Photoshop so that it doesn't get complicated is that, bro, Photoshop is a layer-based program, meaning to create all of this stuff on the image, it might seem intimidating. Each of these things is an individual layer, and I'm about to lay that out for you, right? So because I know you want to get into the juicy stuff, I'm gonna start with that. However, what I would typically do is build this background first, right? And we're gonna build the background second. First, we're gonna find a picture of LeBron James dunking, because the main thing that I see people search on Photoshop, how to cut somebody out of an image, right? So I'm gonna show you how to do that, right? So we want a large resolution of LeBron dunking. This is pretty high res right here. And I believe I could find this one somewhere, but I'm gonna show you just in the spirit of recreation, you should kind of pick your own, right? So you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna go to here to copy image, and then you're gonna come to Photoshop. You're gonna hit new, right? And it's that image, right? It's that image in, and then boom, now I've got my image. Now, this is how you cut somebody out, and I'm gonna use a complicated background like this just so you can see how way that I learned to do it, which is really the best way to do it. And then I'm gonna show you the new tools that they have, right? So let's say, you know what, we'll find him on a white background. Okay, so for example purposes, if we were gonna use this image, show you the difference, right? And I'm gonna just copy this one in. So if it was on a white background, you could use something like the wand tool, the magic wand tool. What that's gonna do is select all of the similar color around the subject or whatever item actually. Simply select that, right? And if you had that selected, you would honestly just hit delete, then boom, that background would be gone. Now, It's not always the best way to do it because you have stuff like this going on. Let me turn this off. I have stuff like this going on. It's not always the most accurate selection, and that's because the light off of whatever arena he was in is kind of blending in with this white back here. And so what you could also do is simply turn that tolerance down and not have that, right? And then hit delete, then boom, you could do it like that. However, it's not a lot of times that you're gonna find one already, like someone's already did the work that we're trying to do on an image like this, right? So even if it's a background to where it's mostly light or whatever in this image, right, doing that would be virtually impossible. So the magic wand tool is a method, but it's not usually the choice, right? With the quick selection tool, it kind of uses colors to say, hey, this is what you want to select. It behaves better on images where, once again, like this image, it would perform well on an image like this because, again, the background the work is pretty much done, right? To make it work too. Now, this is a fairly new tool, especially if you've been designing as long as I have. And this object selection tool, and what it does is uses the image kind of say, hey, like, you know, like now it just computed and said, hey, do you want to grab him? Is this what selection you want to make, right? Yes, for the most part I do. However, shoes, I want his shoes as well. No, what kind of makes this design is that his whole body is showing. So we can either come over here and say, okay, let's do the lasso. Then we could even guide it and say, hey, do part, right? Let's do around his body and his body only. Let's just compute that. I've honestly had great results like this. I even think an image like this, we might have to do it the old-fashioned way. And let me preface this by saying the old-fashioned way is the best way. Okay? So kind of got some of the shoes, but as you see, doesn't know enough about those pixels, right? So about to do this the old-fashioned way, right? This is called the pen tool, right? And you hit P to get to it. In case you don't see it, to the pen tool down here, and if any one of these are selected for any reason, you go over here, down with your mouse, and hit pen tool, and then it will bring it up, right? So pen tool, literally point based, right? I don't know if you can see that little blue dot, but basically it's where you start. So let me just show you how it works by doing his head, right? So boom, you put the point there, and then you come to another point, you click, but you don't let go. You hold, drag, right? And you're basically trying to mimic the shape, whatever you're trying to do. Just put it there, and then you go to the next point. Go there, you drag, hit the option tool on a Mac, right? The option key affect this whip, because what it's gonna do now, throw that around, right? And so you see, if you kind of remember geometry and how that works, then kind of see what the pen tool does. You just kind of click, drag, you're trying to match. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead this, and I know you can't see this, so it. Select it, you hit Command Enter, and then the selection, right? And now you see it's sort of an exact cutout of this image, which is what you want as far as to make a clean design. So you're gonna go here, and you can do two things. You can make it non-destructive by hitting that button that I just hit, right clicking and converting it to a smart layer, right? Smart object, and then dragging it into our composition. Right now, first thing I'm going to teach you is how to basically enlarge something in Photoshop, right? So if select B, you're going to have the move tool selected. This allows you to move around anywhere you want across the screen. You can make them boom dunk, you can do whatever, right? So I want the same size. I know that it's a slightly different pose, but what do is Control T and then bring up this blue box. You're simply gonna drag down to make it bigger. Hit enter when you're pleased with the size. Go back and explain something to my new designers. Back in the day, we had to hold shift to get this symmetrical scale, right? Before they changed it to that, if we didn't hold shift, this is what we get when trying to drag. You know, we get it distorted, right? So if you ever want to distort an image, which you should never really want to do that, then you'd hold shift to actually do that, right? So the very first thing we're gonna do is build the background. Right now, I'm gonna go and get the Lakers official color palette, because that image has a bunch of filters, so it's not true to the colors, right? Color palette, kind of copy. As you can see, pal is not visible, and like we said about layers, it's because it's behind this base layer. If I drag it up here, then now it's visible. And I'm gonna Control T to transform it. I'm smaller and I need it to sit right here. Grab colors as I need them, right? So I'm gonna make this base invisible, and I'm gonna use a tool that you're gonna use in Photoshop, right? And that is eyedropper tool. That's an I, right? And you can use the letter I to get to that tool on the keyboard. So I kind of want yellow, right? I want to grab that yellow, and then I want over here the background. I want to do a new layer, and boom, I wanted this yellow, right? So I'm gonna this yellow, then I'm gonna come down here and I'm gonna do the color, right? And then I'm gonna hit OK, and then boom, that's gonna give me the color looking for right now. Notice once again, there's filters on this. You can kind of a little bit off from the actual gold, but that's fine. You mean we're not the colors in this tutorial, right? So I don't know what that white text says in the background, but we're just gonna say LeBron, right? So to create text in Photoshop, you simply just need to hit the T on the keyboard, or come over here and select the tool, the type tool, and then you're gonna basically click in here. Now, before you do that, notice that it's the same color as my picker over here. So if I was to make text, it really wouldn't be visible because it's the same exact color as that background, and that's not what we want to do. We want it to be white like the other one. So we can double click here, move the wheel over to white, and then we want to make some text, and we're going to say LeBron. Now we're going to do the move tool to move this where we can see it, and then we're going to hit the T to bring up our text controls. And I also like to work from it over here in the character panel. If you go to character, if you go to window and then character, you should be able to see this shortcut over here. These are basically where all your fonts are, right? And fonts are basically this. Let me show you what fonts are. These are fonts. These are all the fonts I have on my computer. I've actually got a Lakers font that I'm going to use, and I'm going to show you where you can get some fonts from, right? So boom, here's the Lakers font, but we want to kind of duplicate what they got going on over here, which whatever that says is literally running off of the page. So we're going to have LeBron kind of running off the page. And so what we're going to do is we're going to Command T, right? And then on these corners, or anywhere actually, if you hover, if you come out a little bit, it's going to ask you to rotate, right? So you're going to come over here to this little corner. You're going to click, hold shift, right? And let me show you first what's going to happen. If you don't hold shift, you can put this at a really messed up angle, and it's going to be hard to figure it out. But if you hold shift, it's going to boom, snap it to an angle. We want a perfect 90-degree angle. We want to drag it down, and we want to size it all the way up into where boom, LeBron kind of runs off the page. Right now, I know it's not the exact same, and it looks like maybe his name is even a lot bigger, or whatever that says is a lot bigger, and it's not really supposed to be that legible, which I understand, but for the sake of this tutorial, let's go ahead and continue. So the next thing that seems to be a part of that background, it's obviously says LAL Lakers at the bottom right there. So we're gonna kind of duplicate that. We're gonna come to our eyedropper because we want it to be that purple. Make that invisible because it's still trying to do that, right? So boom, we're gonna come here, LAL. Now it didn't take my purple, which is fine, because all I have to do is that now, right? And so now I'm gonna kind of pull this above my base so that I can get an idea. And I noticed that that font is a little bit, and this is part of design too, is noticing that type of stuff. That font is different. That font is probably Futura or something like that. Something more blocky. This is a taller, more condensed font, right? So I'm gonna go to Futura, and once you get to a certain point, you'll be able to look at these fonts. I'm gonna space these out a little bit by using a shortcut option and then the arrow keys. But what that is basically this attribute right here. I believe that's the tracking or kerning, one of the two, but just to put a little space between the words, right? And then boom, same process, Control T, come over here. I want it to be remotely the same size. All right, so we've got that about the same size, and we could even do a trick I want to teach y'all by, if you hold command on one of these points, you can kind of skew it a little bit up and down at like you see, and even if you hold shift, you'll get a better. So that's what I'm gonna do. You can really just make it italic, but just for the sake of speed, I'm gonna do it like this, right? And so it doesn't have to be exact, but boom, we want something similar, right? So far, you know, we've got our version of this same poster, right? So there's other elements in the background, right? Now I'm gonna bring this to the front so that I can kind of hide it when I need it. All right, so it also says Lakers down there, so we sort of need to do the same type of deal. We're gonna do Lakers, rotate that, and kind of put it down here behind, right? And I'm gonna put all this stuff in a group. And how you do that is you select a layer, then you select the bottom of that layer and Control G to group, and I'm gonna call that background, right? So if I hide this, none of that's visible now. This is my background, okay? So, and then the stuff on the background, like we got, this says airmail on the side, all right? So since that's a tall condensed font, we'll kind of do that. We'll use the Lakers font for that as well. And that is black. So we're gonna do T, change this to black. And we're gonna do air. No, I'm gonna call it Rico mail. And it was kind of cut off a little bit to where you could barely see what was going on, right? So I did that. Now what I'm gonna do is show y'all how to duplicate a layer too. So what you do is you hit Command J on the layer, and then it's gonna create the other layer. You could also right click, go up and hit duplicate layer, but it's gonna ask you too many questions, and for me that extra step is too long. So I'm gonna just click and drag it over here, right? And now, you know, we got something similar. I need to kind of line these up to make sure they're about at the same point, because honestly what you'll find out by doing this on designs is that like where this stuff is placed has a lot to do with how good a design is, and you probably wouldn't even think that, or because you see a design and you think, oh, it's LeBron or it's this cool texture that makes it what it is. No, it's actually how everything is placed, how everything all looks together, right? All right, so boom, I'm gonna resize these just to kind of match the placement, and then boom, now mine is starting to, you know, kind of come along a little bit, right? So I'm gonna hide my palette, and the last step I'm gonna show y'all, just because you kind of get the gist of everything at this point, is I'm gonna show y'all how they did this, how they applied this texture on the background, right? And so what that is looks like just a noisy texture, right? So you come to Google noisy texture, right? And you need it to be extremely high res, right? We'll even do, that's noisy. That's kind of noisy. Okay, we'll do that. So boom, you come here to the right above the background and you hit paste, right? And then you Command T, resize this up. Now in this case, I like to do this just because it doesn't really matter. And so when you can do this, then you might as well take advantage. And so you do that, and then boom, you come over here to your blending mode, and then you select the one that best suits your liking, right? So a lot of the times it's a combination of a bunch of these, right? Because it'll maybe be, okay, we'll do screen for the light colors, and then we'll duplicate this, and I'm gonna show y'all something else, right? So you come over here, and this, where it says LeBron right here, you hit Command and you hit the T, it's gonna select all of everything that's selected with him. Right now, you're gonna come with, it's gonna select everything selected with that layer, right? So then you come here to this layer and you're gonna hit this little square with a circle and do a mask. Basically, that says only show here, right? So if I invert that, first of all, I'm gonna take the so you see that it's only showing on that. So I could either do this, you know, I could even invert it, which to invert a color. So right now it's black. If I wanted to invert it, I'd hit Command I, and that'll turn it, you know, it'll literally just invert it. So I want that inverted, and then kind of maybe, I want the opacity to go down a little bit, and then I'm gonna put this behind so that it doesn't affect that layer, and then boom, you see I kind of got that texture that they have back there. Now I don't know how my Lakers got like that, but here's a shortcut. Boom, you can go in here, you can right click, and it's gonna bring you up all these layers. You go to Lakers, you hit T, and then you say, man, how did that happen? Where's my palette? Turn my palette back on, come over here, and then boom, we're back purple, right? Now, what I would also do to give this another element is I duplicate this, I'd bring it to the front above LeBron, and so I'd either clip it to him to where it only affects him, which you do Option Command G, or I would hold Command, select his layer, and then do the mask like I showed you on the last part, right? So that way you can kind of affect, you don't want it to be that strong on him, right? Then all the other stuff on here, you know, like he has a shadow that kind of makes this design. So I could do this, but I'm gonna do this kind of the easy way, right? I'm gonna double click over here in the space to bring up the layer style, and I'm gonna do a drop shadow. And I'm gonna do the size on that down to 0, and then I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna drag it down here, and then I'm gonna come to the opacity and do it like to where it's subtle right there at maybe 23, and then boom, right? Once again, it's similar. It's not the exact same, it's similar, right? I could put a random barcode up here. Let's see, barcode PNG. I want one with a, there we go. Copy image, paste, put a random barcode up here, right? I can go find LeBron James signature PNG, copy image. Now I'm gonna paste this in. Right now, you notice it has that white. Remember, I showed you in this situation we could do the magic wand tool, but I'm gonna show you another way. You're gonna go over here, double click layer style, hit this layer, right, and just take the white out. Just take the white out. When it's black and white, you can do that, right? And then Command T to make it smaller, and then I'm gonna probably move this layer behind his feet. All right, so basically it's that simple to recreate something. What I want you to do is follow along with this, maybe put your favorite player and tag me, post it on Instagram, tag me on Instagram and say, hey, Rico showed me how to design this. Now I'm gonna show you real briefly how to save it and close it. So you come up here, so you go to file, you go to export, and you go to save for web, right? You're basically gonna find a location to save it, and then boom, you have your file just like that. At this point, you're really ready to leave this tutorial with basic graphic design skills. So take this sauce, practice it on other things. Gonna be back with more on this topic, man. I love y'all. Let's get it.